Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Chris Holden and this is a video walkthrough to sort of get you going on the Canvas website for the class OILS 534 Mobile Learning. Right next to me here you can see something that looks pretty close to what you'll see when you're actually taking the course. It's a Canvas website, just like a lot of your courses probably have been lately. The titles and stuff will be different because I'm sort of working in a separate sandbox, but this is what you'll see when you arrive. This is a welcome page. So if you want to ever go back and find this is I think what you'll see when you first navigate to the course. But if you ever want to go back to this is called the welcome page and is listed in the pages that are over here in the sidebar. So here there is, I don't know, probably too much text. But I wanted to fault on the side of completeness rather than something else. There's a little welcome message for me. There's contact information. And then as you can see, I don't know, Canvas is a little bit busy, so it will inject these to-do lists and calendars sort of all over the place. And I don't really have a whole lot of control over that. Same thing with the announcements at the top. I haven't made an announcement. This is just sort of part of what's there. I guess I'll figure out how to delete that before I post the class. Some of the important things that you'll want to see, hopefully all the important things are over here in the sidebar, but I guess the first one you'll want to go all the way through is the syllabus. This has some of the same information. You'll notice some redundancy in these introductory things. Part of it is that I'm required to have them in certain places, but part of it is I want to make things easy to find, and part of that might be putting them in multiple places in case a person looks in, just one of them. But of course, if you can't find anything, just go ahead and get in touch with me, and we'll figure that out. Right away in the syllabus, there's all this contact information. That's welcome video again. And there's some more text here. In particular, there's a description of what this class is all about. I think one of the main things that this is about is a group of people getting together to try and wrap their heads around a pretty diverse set of concepts. So, there's not a lot of strict information that I need you all to assemble within your heads. It's more like gaining some tools to think within a very broad and unencompassable place. I'll of course tell you more about my relation to all this stuff a little bit later. But beyond those sort of basic things like how the course is going to work and stuff like that, there's then the set of all the modules that we'll work through in the time. There's statements about grading and accommodation. There's also some other boilerplate stuff for Canvas that's maybe easier to see in the modules section, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But this is a course about mobile learning. It's a place where I've done a lot of work over the last 15, 20 years or so, and mostly I'm teaching it because I'm really excited to share that space with people and encourage other people to make cool things there. And this is just an introduction, getting a little bit used to vernaculars that people have around the space, thinking about maybe sort of philosophically and logistically what you'd be involving yourself in if you were going to work in a space like this. How to think about things, how to pull them apart. This is, of course, a Accelerated Online Program course, an 8-week class that's conducted entirely through Canvas, which means that it's handled asynchronously. There's no Zoom meetings. There's no in-person meetings. If you would like to find ways to talk to each other, I'm sure we can figure that out, but it's not a set part of the course. So everything will be done within this website. And because of the nature of the material and what I think will lead to good learning, the most important thing we'll be doing is sharing work and ideas with each other, getting to know each other through this work, getting to dig into the ideas in some personal ways. Sweet thing, I'm recording right now and I need a minute. No, I need a minute. I'm recording right now. Please. I'm doing it right now. You have to give me a minute. Okay? All right, so I don't know. That's pretty apropos for the whole mobile learning idea. With whether it's e-learning or m-learning, a lot of these programs, the idea is you're supposed to be able to do some of this learning and stuff in your everyday life in the in-between moments. And right now, I've got a few minutes before I got to take the kids to school. And even though the pandemic trained us pretty well, sometimes we have interruptions. So I guess that's as much a part of getting to know what kind of a place this is going to be as any of the stuff here in Canvas. Obviously, you all lead diverse, challenging lives that are full of work and other obligations. So I do hope that there's a way for this to seem like something other than busy work, something that helps you with what your large scale mission is in this world, that has something to do with you registering for this class. But since I don't know any of you yet, that's not going to be in the Canvas site itself. It'll have to be what develops through our conversations together as we get to know each other through these ideas. But anyway, back to the syllabus. You're going to be participating in the course LMS. Pretty much most of the stuff that you'll be submitting will be in the form of discussion posts. Not that everything's going to be a literal discussion, but sorry, the pencil sharpener is distracting me. Not everything's going to be a literal discussion, but I want us to be able to work around each other, to see each other. And that's the easiest way that it's possible as far as I know in this sort of environment. And so most things will be in the form of a discussion post. Some of those I do hope turn into real discussions. I'm very excited to find out, what your worlds are like and what you're thinking about any of this stuff, where you'd like to go with it. And discussion board's about the best I can manage with that until we get to know each other. It's also a short time frame, which doesn't give us as much time as we might otherwise have to acclimate. So hopefully everything's fairly simple. Let's see. One bit of warning is that something that I'm very wary of is putting all of my hard work and thought into something that's not mine. So this website is not something that I have a huge amount of control over. I have figured out how to make it so that you can create discussion topics, I think, discussion boards, or threads, or whatever we want to call them. So that's a little bit of student control. But one of the things I like least about this space is how much it's locked down, both for you and for me. And so in preparing these course materials, one of the things I've been very careful to do is to prepare them elsewhere and then copy and paste them onto the site. And I would encourage you to do similarly with the work that you put together. That's your hard-earned content and ideas. And while we do need to use this site to share them with each other, I would highly encourage you to create and save them somewhere else, potentially publish them somewhere else, and then copy and paste URLs for us. That should be possible in all of our submissions, that you could sort of put something in from the outside. But just to be warned from the outset that your access to this space is controlled by your membership at UNM, and so it is possibly temporary, certainly contingent, and something that I don't know is good to be aware of. Finally, there's sort of the logistics of contacting each other. I will be monitoring this website. I will be monitoring my email during the term. If there's other ways that we can stay in touch and work with each other, I will monitor those. I will be responsive. Like you, I've got busy lives, and so sometimes it might take me a day or so to get to something, but I will be prompt in replying to questions and things. And I would encourage you all to not necessarily wait for me if you don't have to. There's going to be a bunch of other people who are working on this stuff together, and I trust you to be motivated, agentive individuals and capable of moving each other forward with any of this stuff. Let's see, I think I've already covered participation. There's going to be a lot of discussion boards. Ultimately, what I'm most interested in is creating, not necessarily always mobile stuff, certainly not always on smartphones, but I'm interested in designing learning experiences that can rise to a high level of meaning for the people engaging with them. And a lot of times for me, that's meant using mobile devices. It's meant going out into the world. So if that's in a place where our interests overlap, that's somewhere where maybe this course could be a beginning place and take us forward. This course is 8 weeks, and for the most part, there's 8 modules, roughly 1 module a week. All the stuff that you're used to from classes, read this, let's talk about it, let's get to know each other through the discussion boards, that kind of thing. There are 2 small exceptions I do want to warn you about ahead of time. Is module 2 is a little bit more of a free-form module and doesn't just happen during that second week. The idea is to start something during that second week and take it through the entire term. And what that thing is I want you to pick something that you want to learn, like let's say how to do, and document that process using the resources of the world and your own mobility, sort of a documentation of what it's like to choose something to learn and use the resources that are out there, something that people would normally call informal learning. And then module 7 is similarly a more creative project. It's to create a branching narrative using a digital tool called Twine. And we'll get to all of that, but I did want to mention it now because it's a creative project. You're going to be telling a story, and that's a little bit harder to regiment, do this on this day kind of a thing. Now, for the sake of making things legible through the term and through Canvas and everything, that's supposed to happen at the end of the term. But I would encourage you, if you know that there's a week or something when you're going to have some time and you're going to be able to let the creative juices flow, that you could certainly tackle that early, or the majority of it, or get started with it early, and I would highly recommend that. That does bring me to some other sequence things. So otherwise, we're going to go module 1, module 2, module 3, or whatever. But this is an asynchronous course, so I imagine we will not entirely be in lockstep with each other. In some ways, the discussions will benefit greatly from having a lot of participants working at the same time on the same thing. But I do want to also make it possible to float around in there a fair bit. So certainly don't let me stop you from reading or watching anything ahead of time. There's no reason that I should be an impediment to learning instead of a facilitator. All of the course materials will be available from the first day. If you find anything that's missing or confusing in terms of that, do let me know and I'll get that fixed. But yeah, let's see. My intent is to give you as much agency as possible with this course. It's hard at the very beginning because Canvas isn't set up that way, and 8 weeks is a pretty short time to, cultivate a relationship that might make that agency feel possible. But I'm here to facilitate your learning, not make sure you walk through my gauntlets. The text for the class, there's a main text called Mobile Lenses on Learning by Mark Pengren. It's a recent book about mobile learning. It's specifically focused on language learning in certain respects, which is a place where I've done a lot of my mobile learning work, which may not directly apply to the kinds of learning that you're interested in, but I do think it's a good generic example to use, better than, I don't know, people often do math, which is actually my other area of experience. That's what my PhD is in. I was trained as a mathematician. People use that in a lot of education discussions as a stand-in for all kinds of learning, and I think language learning is actually a much better stand-in a lot of respects, but we'll get into that. We will go through a little bit of this book very carefully, but not all of it. I did choose it as a book to sort of be a book on your shelf that represents like a good resource for thinking about mobile learning and all of the threads that lead into it. Mark is very good about citing his sources and connecting the readers to those other conversations. So I think it would be a valuable book to read through on your own, and certainly feel free to read the whole thing as soon as you'd like to, and to have for later reference as well. Mobile learning is a very diverse space, and so there are, of course, lots and lots of other textbooks, some that are more focused on sort of nuts and bolts, assuming that you're going to do something that's already pretty simple, like taking a class and putting it into a phone, let's say, that's focused on the nuts and bolts of that. There's other ones that focus more on, let's say, the global picture and sort of the specific possibilities that being able to put things on phones brings to parts of the world where phones are the only advanced technology that people will be using for learning, let's say. So there's lots out there. If there's something that I can help you find or help you think about in terms of what would be a good resource, I'm happy to do that. But there's, of course, Google and Google Scholar and things, and I'm sure you know how to at least get started with some keywords. But it's a very broad world, and so it's a little bit weird that you would have one textbook to rely on. But at the same time, there's something very nice about all having read the same thing and working through it at the same time. And so, it's not totally useless. There's also a few things that I've written in this space. I won't subject you to too many of them, but I will have you read a little bit of the things that I've written, just to get an idea of where maybe most I would be able to help you with your own adventures in this space. And then we're going to have various articles, book chapters, websites, videos. I'll post a bunch of little videos to hopefully make the readings come alive a little bit, make them feel like there's someone there. I'd encourage you to post your own videos as some of those discussion posts. Tools is about, sort of the physical stuff we're going to be using to participate in this class. I've talked a lot about Canvas already. I have talked a lot about the extensive bodies of literature that are out there. There's also software tools like Twine that we will be forcing you to use a little bit. I would encourage you to have a pretty open mind about what tools and methods you pick up, that there's lots of stuff out there that's fun to use. And even if you don't see yourself as like a techie person, I certainly didn't when I started all of this. There's a lot of fun to be had if you can not worry about being competent. If you're willing to just play around with some of these things, you can get pretty darn far. And so I would encourage you to take on that sort of mindset. But on the whole, we're not going to be using anything too crazy. Canvas, obviously. In most of my classes, we use Google Drive. I haven't made specific plans for it here, but as a shared workspace, it's tremendous, and it's also maybe something that you use outside of school, unlike Canvas. So there's a possibility that might be useful to us. Same thing with Zoom. There's no video conferences planned for the course, but UNM gives us accounts, so if they can be helpful, we can use them. Twine is this tool, like I said, for making branching narratives, which I think is a tremendous tool for lots and lots of reasons that I'll try not to talk about now. But if that's something you'd like to try and mess around with, making your own choose your own adventure story that can be published to the web, that's what Twine does. And then obviously there's lots of other stuff out there. I'll go through the student learning objectives real quickly. I would like you to have a chance to learn about several dimensions or analytic lenses which may be used to analyze and create mobile learning, learn about the history of educational technology broadly and apply its lessons to existing and potential applications of mobile technologies to learning, discover some of the affordances of mobile technologies for learning, understand mobile learning as complex content, more than a simple recipe for putting courses into phone screens. And that's maybe the biggest change from what I think sometimes people imagine when they're registering for this course. The logistical, technical learning to do around this, I think, is pretty small compared to the bigger questions that are in the room about what do we hope we're trying to accomplish with any of this. If you want the shortcut to the logistical stuff, I think you could impress most people by simply not putting things in PDF form. But anyway, to continue, I'd like you to become familiar with some of the culture, history, and applications of mobile technologies to learning. I'd like you to, just in a small way, research some specific instances of the production, use, and evaluation of mobile learning scenarios to see some examples, to see how they work, particularly if you're going to be doing research along these lines. Getting to see how other people do it is super valuable. And then finally, I'd like you to critically analyze the methods and meaning of mobile learning, both in theoretical terms and humanistically, from funding to epistemologies of evaluative methods. So, I don't know, that's quite a mouthful, but hopefully that does a good job of describing the kinds of things that I'd like us to be able to go after in this course. So here's the course map. I will not go into too much detail right now, as I know this video is already quite long. But we will spend the first module getting to know each other in terms of this world of mobile learning. Module 2 I mentioned before is where you'll pick something that you want to learn and talk to us about how you're trying to learn it, who you're learning it with, that sort of thing, what tools you end up using, what ends up being hard, how you deal with difficulties. And then in Module 3, we'll get into some of the literature. We'll start out with Aga Palalas's 5 Dimensions of Mobile, which is a pretty easy to wrap your head around framework for splitting up some of these things. We'll look at some early examples that exist out in the world, and then also that are sort of narrower in terms of being like simple research projects and stuff. Module 4, we will start Penguin's book and look at what he calls not dimensions like Palalas does, but lenses. He has several lenses, another analytical framework for breaking down how we're thinking about these things. And we'll compare the two and start to think about how to really use them to analyze what's going on in mobile learning. In Module 5, we'll get to something I call critical digital pedagogy, and it's the first module where we're not specifically necessarily even talking about mobile learning. This happens in education in lots of ways, but you can't do education, you can't do mobile learning narrowly. There are so many outside influences that can't be ignored, and so one of the most important ones, I think, is thinking very carefully about what kind of pedagogies we're trying to put in place, who's in charge of them, who is subject to them, what agency looks like, and when it's not available. Anyway, we'll read some blood-boiling stuff along those lines. And then in Module 6, we'll get a little bit into some of the things that I have been most excited about and think represent some of the strongest potential for innovative education in this space. For now, we'll call that geolocational and place-based mobile learning. I've made a lot of augmented reality games that are kind of like Pokemon Go that connect learners to specific physical and social places. And I think that's pretty interesting. So I want to introduce you a little bit to not just my work in the area, but some of the people that I've gotten to be around and some of their projects and some of the thinking that goes into imagining that is an area of great potential. And then finally, we will get to Module 7, where you get to try out Twine and write your own narrative, branching narrative. I'll show you something that I've written. This is also an example, not just of what you might want to do in terms of like, oh yeah, everyone's going to want to make a Twine for their class or something like that. But Twine is an example of a whole class of things, a new capability that's made possible that has some interesting angles to it and that invites people to participate and sort of breathe life into their creations through it. It's probably new software for all of you, and taking on a new piece of software and turning it into something that becomes a mode of expression for you is something that is an everyday kind of thing around here and something that we'd be asking our students to do. It's very much an emblematic of a lot of the 21st century learning stuff that people put together a while back in terms of thinking what new kinds of things might we ask people to do these days. So it's a good example of that. I think it's a platform that can be used in a lot of diverse ways as well. So we'll spend some time trying to make something there and hopefully having some fun playing around. And then finally, we will have one more sort of analytic unit, one based on design-based research. And that is especially for the people who might be putting together research projects in this program. And this gives you a little bit of a big picture look at what it might look like to be on the inside of one of those projects. How does making something for someone else to learn with fit into an overall research program? And what does it mean to create tools for people to use, and how do they fit into a larger landscape? What might we actually use them for? And what are some of the conflicts and contradictions inherent in that work? So anyway, that's the run through of all the modules. And I'll take you just through some of the last logistical bits. Of course, we'll have to talk about assessment. In my home department, the Honors College, there's actually only 3 grades that are given out at the end of the term. And that's A, credit, and no credit. And in fact, both the credit and the no credit don't show up on GPA. Only the A does. And I'm very proud of this structural tool over there. I'm sad that we can't use it here. I think it helps us focus in the classroom on matters of learning rather than matters of, sort of getting points. It lets the focus be on the actual student's progress in becoming a bigger, better person. And so even though we will be using points, I would hope to give some sense of that ethos to you. And I've tried to do this in how I've set up the points, but also in encouraging you to see what's behind the points. The points are necessary for everyone else in this process other than us. They help scaffold things a little bit maybe for us when we don't get to meet each other on this regular basis like you might in an in-person class. But on the whole, if we can see past the points, you might be able to do these things that are truly important. Things like taking risks, thinking deeply, developing an interest in what's actually there to learn itself, and see yourselves, like all the people who are involved in this course, the students and me, as a community of some sort, at least briefly, not just a person who's signed up to get some points. Anyway, we do have to have points, and we do have to have all these other grades, and so I have created a point system that's not exactly typical. There's a lot of points. And if you get 1 million points or more, then that's an A+. And all the points for each of the assignments are sort of described in the modules themselves and the assignments themselves. But anyway, if you look in the syllabus, there's the point business. Grading is also fairly simple in this class. If you are participating according to the social norms, responding to feedback, growing in the way that you're thinking about these things, pulling things out of the class, I don't think that there's any reason to be more nitpicky than that in terms of what we could hope for from you. Of course, in any specific instances, I'm happy to talk about how the grading's going, but I don't think it's something we need to complicate too much. Of course, I'm the one. It's easy for me to say that, right? But I'm always happy to talk further about things or specify anything that's unclear or negotiate, additional points or whatever. In particular, I am happy for people to complete assignments late. There is sort of a social obligation in the sense of trying to talk about the same things at the same time. But as far as the ultimate grade is concerned, I'm happy to, provide full points for things that have been done before I need to turn grades in. There's also a sense in which I don't know, I picked a path for us to follow in this space, but in some ways it's very arbitrary. If you have strong motivations to do learning and work that would be easy to recognize within this space, I'm very happy to encourage and motivate and award with points that kind of work. So if you're looking to get some sort of extra credit by doing something that's not on our list, you can talk to me about that, and I bet we could work something out. Especially if you're willing to take some other people along with you and turn it into something that you're doing together. Of course, it's my intention to accommodate any sorts of difference that would make it possible for you to participate more fully in this course. There's the basics of that, any learning disabilities or things like that are documented with UNM. I will do, whatever I can to make those immaterial for participation in this course. And we don't have any of the timed elements that often make that directly applicable. But anything that I can do, I'd be happy to do in that vein. But also, I don't know, I don't need documentation. If there's something about the way that your life's going now that I can make some sort of allowance that doesn't disturb what the rest of us are trying to do too much. Again, that commitment to each other and participating together is the main thing that I would want to protect in trying to make changes. But very happy to make this class work for the people who've actually registered for it, not just who the university imagines you are in general. There's a lot of specific boilerplate information that goes along with this. UNM's accommodation statement, the Title IX statement, there's an academic integrity statement, an email use. Anyway, you can read all of those. There's some other ones that are that pertain specifically to Canvas that are listed in this basic module at the beginning. And if you have any questions about any of the things that I haven't mentioned because they're sort of base assumptions I'm making, please do let me know. Let's see. I think in your day-to-day participation, you won't spend a huge amount of time on this syllabus. I would like you to look through it carefully and talk to me about it at the beginning here, but mostly you'll be looking at this list of modules, I imagine. So here's the course in Canvas resources, all the boilerplate stuff. I've pinned a few of our main discussions here, and they're also pinned within the discussions area. And then here's each of the modules. There's often a sort of overview that has a list of all the things that are there. And then there are some things that I've produced, short bits of text, short videos, things that describe the assignments or what we're going to read, stuff like that. And then the assignments themselves. So this is where you'll spend most of your time. If you'll notice, these assignments have due dates on them and points associated with them. They roughly go through week by week in order, especially with Module 2 and Module 7. There's a little bit of interleaving, but they roughly go in order. And the things that you share with us, the discussion posts, the things like that, those are the things that have due dates. The actual readings and video watchings and working through the material, those would come beforehand. And just how far beforehand, totally up to you. But yeah, so there's 8 of these things. All of these things are here. They have due dates, and I imagine that's how we'll navigate each other through all of this. Other entry points that I can think of is over here on the side, there's a discussions label, and that's where all of these discussions will be listed. They look a little funny because I have the window zoomed right now, but all of the discussions that relate to all of the assignments, and then those pinned discussions that might be more frequent visiting sites for us. Additionally, there is a sidebar item for assignments where all of these things are listed, and one for pages, which is really interesting, although for some reason it always lands on the welcome page, so you might want to use view all pages. And this will give you a list of all those individual little bits and pieces that I have created within the course in case you need to navigate back to them or something. Finally, there's files where I have some currently I have, this doesn't look very good in the zoomed in version. I have some reading materials there. Maybe we'll end up with some other things there, but I think the majority of stuff we can find on the internet, especially anything that we need to go over in Pegram's book, is there. So I don't imagine you should have to buy the book. And then there's my book, which is a free PDF to download anyway. Thanks to EDC Press for making that possible. I don't know. I think that's about everything. If there are other walkthroughs through Canvas that would help you, if there are navigation things that are unclear, please do let me know. The order and the flow of stuff on Canvas has felt very unintuitive to me. I've tried to iron it into a form that makes sense to me, but I don't know that that means that it makes sense to you, at least not yet. So hopefully, and as with everything in the course, if there are problems, I'm very happy to help work them out. If there's confusion, that's something that we can dispel. And the way that that will happen is if you get in touch and tell me what's going on, tell each other what's going on, become a part of this shared room for a few weeks. So that's the end of my walkthrough. I know it's long. None of my other videos are this long. At least I hope not. And I look forward to getting to know you through the course.